So this presentation is kind of meant to help you all get an idea of the different resources that are offered on our campus. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with some of these. Some of them are resources that we allocate student fees towards. So it's really important to know what all those different departments are, so that if you are meeting with a student during your office hours, or if even one of your peers knows you're involved with ASOSU and they're like, hey, how can I get connected with this resource? You have the ability to share that information with them. It's definitely not all of them. We're only covering some of the ones that we personally felt were really important today, but we will be, at our second training, be covering all of the student fee allocated departments.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what this is.
And something I would just say really quickly is, as like representatives and senators, it's really important that, you have to keep in mind you're representing diverse constituencies. And so pulling from these different types of groups and knowing these resources is really important. It allows you to understand, one, kind of the environment on campus, but also some of the resources that students can utilize to combat some issues, and also just having that understanding really grounds you within the community really well. So I think it's important. Absorb a lot of this information. I think it's pretty helpful. Anyway, with that.
So this is just an overview of what we'll be covering. Like I said, not all of them are here. The last three ones, HSRC, Family Resource Center, and DCE, we do give student fees towards. All right, so.
Cool. Yeah, so the first thing we really just want to stress quite a bit, it says over here, Academic Success Center, but also really I just want to make sure that you keep in mind that, yes, sometimes you can really get into student government. I know a lot of people that get really passionate about it, and some people it becomes their life. I'm sure a lot of people in these leadership positions can talk about ways in which being an ASOSU and student government can really kind of dominate your life if you're not careful. And so something to just really keep in mind is that you're a student first, and you need to make sure that you're actually putting your academics as a priority. I've seen a lot of students lag behind in their classes, or they skip classes because they feel that student government's important. So yes, student government is important, and we want people to make sure that they're really trying to do their best in their roles. But you can't really be doing that if you're not a student first. So keep in mind that, really prioritize academics. So we just wanted to stress the Academic Success Center. Who's ever used the Academic Success Center? Just curious. Oh, cool. So a couple people. So it's really great. It's located in Waldo Hall. The hours vary a little bit, but I know it's open during the week. Some of the great things they have there is, one, they have tutoring and academic coaching for you, which is really helpful. And it's one thing, to be able to go there and get help from someone. But they also have supplemental instruction tables where you can sit down with others of like-minded people, areas with similar subjects, and you can work with them to complete your homework and kind of get your goals figured out that way. The Writing Center, I know, is available in the library right now, too. It recently moved over there. And they also just teach you a lot of learning strategies, because one of the important things, right, is it's one thing to get tutored and get taught by someone, but it's another thing entirely to be able to repeat that yourself in your own private setting. So I think this is a really good tool to utilize, and it's just, I always want to make sure that people are keeping that in the back of their mind about academics and the importance of academics, because if you don't get your academics set as a priority, you really won't even be able to be a student to represent those other students. So anyway, it's pretty important.
Cool. So then, Aiden's good.
So I'll be presenting on EOP, or the Educational Opportunities Program. Does anybody here, by show of hands, either know what EOP is or utilize your services? Okay, not many. So and that's okay. So the moment you're elected into...
Can you move closer to the mic?
Yeah. Where's the mic?
It's here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stand over here. So the moment you're elected to serve in Congress, you're no longer representing yourselves, but rather the entire student body as a whole. And with that, if students ever need to be connected to resources on campus, it's important that you know of certain resources that can be advantageous to students, one of which being EOP. I utilize their services alongside 500 other students, and it's really centered around non-traditional students. They provide things like academic coaching. They set you up one-on-one with an advisor who will literally, my advisor will go through my Canvas with me. We will point to when my midterms are, when I need to start studying, things of that nature. And I find their services to be really helpful. Has anyone here taken Math 111 at some point? Yeah. So Math 111 is the most commonly failed course at OSU. And if I'm not mistaken, the most commonly failed university course in the U.S. So through EOP, they have smaller classroom settings where commonly failed courses can be approached, with a more one-on-one. So it's the classes are a lot smaller, and students tend to do a lot better in them. They also do things like textbook lending, and then in general just academic coaching and advice. So it's helpful for students who need an extra push with their academics, and students who are non-traditional, first-generation students. yeah, it's a great like service to recommend to other students who may need academic coaching.
Awesome. And then we also have the Survivor Advocacy Resource Center. And like we said, this presentation isn't necessarily exhaustive, so there's a lot of other resources that we want to be stressing as well. But Survivor Advocacy Resource Center, or SARC, is located in Plaquemine. It's really awesome. They offer 24/7 support, and they also, if you go online, they actually have a list of national 24-hour hotlines. It's pretty cool. They have a lot of different ones, including survivor advocacy hotlines, as well as suicide awareness hotlines, things like that. And it's really good to be aware of those. One, because I think you need to be tracking your mental health and making sure that you're okay. But also in case there's ever an emergency situation or these situations arise, it's important to know that there's people to talk to. At the same time, if, say, a constituent or a student comes to you and, they're expressing like, oh, like, I don't know where to go for these types of things, it's good to be able to point them in this direction. So there's also a sexual assault nurse examiner that also works within SARC, and they can they have rape kits that they can administer, and they can also have a lot of counseling support for you as well. They can also point you in directions of counseling and psychological services to help with those kinds of things. And it also houses the Center Against Rape and Domestic Violence, or CARDVA. They work really closely with that organization as well. So make sure to keep this in mind. I think it's a really good resource to utilize.
So kind of along with receiving student health services, we have our counseling and psychological services. This actually used to be a student fee funded unit, but no longer is, which is kind of what Teresa, or I guess she's not here anymore, she was talking about as far as them having student advisory board. The counseling and psychological services has a lot of resources that a lot of students, I would say, don't know about. One of them is their Mind Spa. Has anyone ever used the Mind Spa? Awesome. I'm so glad to see hands, because the Mind Spa is awesome. It's kind of, it's like this room you can reserve to go and take a break and kind of decompress from your week. They have a massage chair. They have biofeedback tools that kind of measure levels of stress. And it's just really like this nice place to go and relax and listen to music and kind of do some form of self-care, which is really important. So it's free for students. Anyone can go, and I would definitely recommend it once it gets closer to finals week, like making a reservation and kind of utilizing that resource, because I know a lot of students don't use it. They also offer individual counseling, group counseling, and family counseling. A lot of their group counseling services center around different topics. Like I've heard they have a group counseling for students who are trying to kind of remove social media from their life and I'm trying to think of the right word, but use less social media. And so I thought that was really interesting because, as we know, it can really affect their mental health. And then you can also bring in family members. If you have a spouse, you can do couples therapy, so things along those lines. And students can have up to one counseling session a week for the whole term. I think you get 10 counseling sessions a term. So that's the student fee, or not student fee, that's the service that you get from CAPS. They also have peer-to-peer support groups, so if you maybe feel like you want to have a conversation with someone, but you don't feel like you need to speak to a counselor, they have students there that will come and talk to you about any kind of service you might be looking for, even if you just want to have a conversation with someone. They also offer wellness coaching, which is pretty much just a workshop on how to do self-care and how to take care of yourself. As we were talking about academics, and the importance of focusing on that, we know with all of your different involvement and focusing on classes and stuff, it can be a bit much at times. And so it's really important to practice self-care, especially in these positions. As some of you may have known, for ASOC in this last year, there were quite a bit of different circumstances that might have led people to feel like their mental health was kind of altered in a sense. And so I think that making sure that you're taking care of yourselves is really important, because as representatives and senators, there will be times when the barometer might make up stories about some of the decisions we're making, or you might take a stance on something where other people don't agree with you on it, and they might criticize you for it. And it's good to be prepared for those kinds of situations and knowing that you need to put yourself first and your education. So it's a good thing to keep in mind. And then they also have light therapy lamps. So if you're someone that comes from out of state where there's a lot of sun, I kind of love that they offer this because it is seasonal depression is a real thing, especially in Oregon. And so the light lamps kind of help you deal with some of those things. So, yeah.
So the next thing is FRC. So I think So FRC is a Family Resource Center. It's another one of the 10 student fee funded units. So I think it's pretty difficult for students in general to tackle both their like workload as well as student governments. Like for us, that's what a major struggle is going to be, is like balancing school life and ASOSU. And so there are other students who are even like a lot busier than us because they have to take care of family members as well, like student parents, for example. And so the FRC really helps those like extremely busy students who have to not only look after themselves and their academics, but their families as well. So the FRC offers a lot of different services to these untraditional students, for example, or it's located in Avery Lodge. And I believe that's like kind of between 9th and 11th Street on the east side of campus. So they have free printing for OSU students, which takes the like cost burden off of a lot of these students who have to prioritize potentially buying diapers or other things for their families. They have storage closets, like kitchen facilities, a shower, laundry, financial resources, childcare, and even events that they put on specific to these members of our community. And not only do they do a lot of like care surrounding the student parents, but also the elderly as well. So, and they also have lactation stations, which isn't listed on here. So.
Cool.
So also we're getting into some of the more student fee funded units. So specifically, we talked a little about the student fee setting process and the role you play in that a little bit. And I'm sure we'll definitely revisit that a little bit later on in some of these subsequent trainings to talk about a little bit more of your role and kind of what that looks like. But student fee funded units are specifically areas that ASOSU recommends fee levels be set at. And so the Human Services Resource Center is one of those. And Erica, who's in the audience, she can correct me if I get any of this information wrong. She works in the HSRC. So it is located in Avery Lodge. And this is really, really great for students. It provides a lot of really awesome programs. We touched on a few of them. One of them that's awesome and it's pictured here, is the food pantry available to students. It's also set up in a really cool way where you don't just walk in and they hand you a box of food. It's set up in a way where you get to walk through kind of like a grocery store style. You get to pick off certain items. You have so many specific food groups that you can pull from. It's pretty awesome. I got a chance to tour it, and I would really recommend anyone who's interested go check it out for one thing. You can also volunteer with it. I'd probably talk to Erica about volunteering. I'm sure that she could hook you up with that. We talked a little bit about this. They offer textbook lending programs, and they have over 900 textbooks currently available. And I know this has been growing in recent years too, and I know that they're also trying to encourage professors to stop getting brand new textbooks every year, so that way students can reuse some of these older textbooks as well. Then they also help with meal bucks. We touched on that a little bit. That's one of the really successful student fee funded programs. But they also help with filling out applications for a SNAP, or a Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It used to be called food stamps and now it's called SNAP. They actually help you walk through the application and learn how to apply for it and if you qualify for those kinds of things. And then they also provide emergency housing resources. It's really cool. If you go in the basement of the HSRC, they have washers, dryers, closet spaces, and then they can also provide emergency housing on campus through UHDS. If for some reason you face houselessness at some point in time, it's a really great tool. One of the things I also just really wanted to touch on with the HSRC is every year ASOSU also makes a trip to Washington, D.C., and every year we get to meet with federal legislators and talk about some of the issues that Oregon is facing. And one of the priorities that students set this year was we really wanted to focus on restructuring SNAP benefits so that students could qualify better for them. So we got to sit down and meet with Peter DeFazio's office, and it was interesting because Peter DeFazio was actually introducing legislation to look at ways to better represent students in the SNAP process and make more students eligible for it. What was really awesome was we said, well, we have the HSRC on campus and this is great. We pulled on a lot of the things that HSRC is doing and said, we'd like to see these offered more through SNAP and stuff. What was really great was a couple weeks later when we returned to Oregon, we got an email back from Peter DeFazio's office that said, thank you so much for meeting with us. This information was really great. We ended up taking information that you gave us and we put it into his legislation, almost word for word of the things that we had really said that students want. So that's just, I think, a really great example, though, of the way that students are able to implement change at the federal level. It's rare sometimes that you see that students really get the chance to actually meet with federal legislators and actually get to see a product of their work. So I thought that was pretty important to share. And I think the HSRC is a really great example of some of the work that students have been able to do around these types of issues. So anyway, I really encourage you, check it out. It's pretty great.
So being a student at Oregon State University is a lot more than just going to class. It's about developing the skills necessary to change the world. And so, I mean, earlier when we were talking about majors, I remember I heard like mechanical engineering, I heard physics, I heard math, I heard econ, I heard poli-sci, you know. And it's interesting that we're all like developing these skills now. And it's the skills that we are developing now that makes our future so bright, you know. So, like, not only am I excited to see what all you accomplish within your congressional tenures, but beyond that as well, you know, we're really developing those skills now. But I digress. So, DCE, diversity and cultural engagement, essentially helps build and like foster those characteristics that will help you in the long run through, I guess, like enabling perspective and initiatives. So, more specifically, I would like to talk about our CRCs, or cultural resource centers. Has anyone here ever visited a CRC, Cultural Resource Center? Yeah, it's awesome to see a lot of hands. And I would encourage you all to like even do your office hours at the CRCs and attend a lot of their events. So we have 7 of them on campus. We have the Asian Pacific Cultural Center, the Lonnie B. Harris Black Cultural Center, Etihad, Cesar Chavez, the Women's Center, Pride Center, and Native American Longhouse. Okay, so if you're ever able to, I would certainly recommend going and visiting. I remember during campaigning, it was actually very easy to go to one of the surrounding clubs for these cultural centers. So if you ever need something to do, if you ever don't know how to spend one of your office hours, I would recommend simply stopping by one of the CRCs, and you'll gain a lot of perspective. It's never a waste of time.
Cool. So kind of moving away from that, we're going to go over some campus demographics. And like we were saying before, what we're wanting to do with this information is to kind of get an idea of, okay, what students make up our university and who are we representing? So to kind of give an idea of that, our total enrollment currently is 30,896 students, and that includes our eCampus. This information was taken from a 2017 report online about our OSU. We have currently more male students than female identifying students, but they do project that that'll change in the coming years. Our minority student enrollment is around 7,660 students. As you can see, among the many different self-identified races, the least amount of students attending from a certain minority group are Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders. I think it's important to kind of note that because a lot of times some of these groups can feel really underrepresented on campus. And if you've ever been to a cultural event, which I really recommend going to any of these because all the cultural centers have really awesome events throughout the year, students will often talk about like some of the issues that they've faced and feeling like their voices aren't always being heard, or concerns that directly apply to them. So it just kind of gives you an idea of the different students that we're working with here. Out of the students, we also have around 23% of our student population are first-generation college students. I see a question.
Is the ratio of people pretty similar to the state's ratio of people, or are we not necessarily representative of the state here?
That's a really good question that I don't know the answer to, but I can find information on, and then maybe get that. Oh, looks like Drew might know the answer.
Well, are you asking specifically about the racial demographics? I believe we are pretty close to the state's racial demographics in many, but not all. If I recall, our Native American student population within the state of Oregon is higher at the K-12 level than it is in OSU's enrollment. And then I believe that our Hispanic population is still actually lower at OSU as relative to the rest of the state. But other demographic markers, I believe, are pretty close.
Mm-hmm. And as you can also see on this slide, over like 1,955 students identified as being a part of 2 different races. So I thought that was kind of interesting as well. But as I was saying, about 23% of our students are first-generation college students. I think this is important to note because a lot of times, especially if you're trying to meet with students, you might come across students that just don't know about all the different resources we offer. And so they might be looking for a certain issue to be addressed, and they don't realize there's a department that addresses that. Like, I know there's a department that works with students in like internal conflict situations, and they'll kind of work as like a mediator between between the two. And so a lot of times if a student's having a problem with someone else at their job and stuff like that, they'll address those kinds of concerns, and that's something that a lot of students don't know exist. And so I think one of the really important things that you all should know is that you as representatives or senators are really like the liaison between a student and our campus resources. So all of you just sitting here today will probably know a lot more about the resources that we offer to students than the average student that may not be involved. And it's really helpful to think of yourselves as like, okay, I'm the person that people can go to like connect with these resources, and this is what I can do to like help my fellow students. So the more you know, the better. For our out-of-state population, we have around 31.38%, and there's 11.5% of international students. And as you can see listed below, those are like the following countries that we have most students from. I know our international students especially struggle a lot at times with feeling like they have a voice and they're represented on campus, and I think it's really important, especially moving forward this year, that we kind of address some of those issues. There's a mental health survey that came out applicable specifically applied to students at OSU that found that our level of like mental health struggles that our international students face is a lot higher here than at a national level, and I think that like outlier kind of shows that there's a lot we could be doing right now to like provide support for those international students and make sure that they feel like this is also their home and their place. Our veteran students are around 3.7%, which I've been told is actually kind of high compared to other universities, and we actually just had a resolution come through House and Senate that was passed, as I was saying before, to establish a separate Veterans Resource Center, because currently on campus everything that's Veterans Affairs related is kind of spread out in all these different spots, and veterans really want to have like one place they can all go to get resources and to kind of be with their community. There's Jason. Cool. Yeah. And then for undergraduate programs, we offer over 200, and that kind of is just a basic overview of our student statistics. So yeah, to kind of end with that, I want to also readdress to keep in mind as you're moving forward, who are you representing on our campus, and to know that when you're trying to make these important decisions on pieces of legislation, that you're not just making decisions based off of what do I believe in. You're here to represent students, and you want to think of, well, what do students want, and what can I do to help all students, and kind of thinking with that mindset.